think the best place to start is, like, why am I here? What am I doing? At first I thought it was like, all right, we're gonna start a business, we're gonna get a brand name because you need to get your story out there. Well, why do you need to get your story out there? Because I've told my story several times to several people that did not know who I was, and their reactions from both of us would be something we remember. What is my story? Well, it's simple. I just served 24 years in the Army. I was doing really well. I was making it to levels was unheard of. And I had a great energy and passion to continue to lead until I got a call one day from my son's principal saying that my son was found in the high school auditorium unresponsive. We later find out that that was my son Christopher's third suicide attempt in the last 15 years. It was at a point in my career, in my life, where I realized that I had a decision to make. And it was the first time in my life as a father I made the decision to be a father versus a guardian. And I chose to transition out of a job that I was and still am in love. That's why I want to tell my story. I think there's a lot of people out there, I think there's a lot of leaders out there that believe they have this thing figured out. I could just be another dude that is trying to get their story out there and no one listens to this shit, and that's fine. But I can tell you that no matter if you're the greatest athlete in the world or the richest person in the world, if you have a family and you love what you do, somebody is feeling the burden of that. And unfortunately for me, for the last 24 years, I ignored it. That burden was my family. And after ignoring signs, which was the first 2 suicide attempts that my son had, I did not ignore the third. The Infectious Leadership is my brand. It's something that I kind of came up with because I've learned that leadership is talked about all the time, but successful leadership is something that has to be felt, not heard. And I think a lot of people mess this up. And I think when I put all that together, I can really help a lot of people out there. Whether you're serving in a leadership capacity, I was very good at doing that for 24 years. I think it's very hard in today's society to be a true father or parent and be very good at your job. I think one of those have to take the sacrifice, and unfortunately for me, it was my family. And I think that's the case for a lot of leaders. As I was coming up in the Army, I'll kind of start with my Army career. As I mentioned, I made rank at a pace that was pretty quick. I joined the Army out of New York. I was going down a very bad road, right? Drugs, alcohol. I was going to wind up in jail or dead. So I needed to make a decision. It's funny because I was actually waiting on my father to come home so I can ask him for another $20 because he thought at the time he was giving me money for gas. But in all actuality, I was actually driving my car down the road, parking it, and then going to buy weed. So after that got old, for some reason my dad couldn't come home that day, and he always comes home that day, but he couldn't come home that day. So I got bored. I figured I wasn't going to drive my truck up the road. So I went for a drive. I don't know where I was going, probably looking for drugs because I was pissed off at my dad because he wouldn't come home and give me the money I needed to buy the drugs. So I stopped in a parking lot, lost, not knowing what to do, probably going to make a bad decision, and I was in a Navy recruiting office. So I go up and I'm sitting outside, and the Navy recruiter comes up to me and says, "Hey man, instead of sitting out here on the floor, why don't you just come inside my office and wait in here?" So I said, "What the hell?" Well, long story short, I told you I joined the Army. I was about to join the Navy, and then the Army recruiter came along on the day I was about to enlist in the Navy to go to MEPS to sign my contract. And needless to say, the Army offered me a better plan at the time. And 2.5 months later, I enlisted in the Army back in 2001. At the time in the Army, I will tell you, I was living the same exact life, except I wasn't getting caught. So again, for all those inspiring to be a soldier. Just understand you are going to have to make that life change. That is a commitment that you are going to have to dedicate yourself to. The Army is not going to change you. It will give you the tools to make you a better person. I say that because I came in and I thought the Army was going to do it all for me. I thought the Army was going to give me a whole bunch of money. It was going to fix me of my problems. And the same influences that were in society before I joined the Army were in the Army. The Army is a micro of society, right? So then I had to continue to grow up, and I was going down a bad road, and this time I was becoming an alcoholic because I realized that I could drink alcohol and still perform pretty well as a soldier, right? All you got to do is wake up and kind of be in somewhat good physical shape. So I did that for a while, and then I saw a little pamphlet on a board talking about a opportunity to go to a promotion board. So I was like, all right, what the hell? I'll go to the promotion board. I found out that a promotion board, adds more money, right? So I studied my ass off, and I went to the promotion board, and I was promoted to sergeant. And then I had a decision to make to re-enlist or get out. And I think this is where my life first changed, because I was on the balcony of my barracks room, drunk, and I was about to call my leader and say, hey man, I'm done, I'm going to go back home. And I was going to do so without telling my parents. And for some reason, right, my mother called me that day, and I had a conversation with my mother, drunk, and I did not make the decision that day. I got lazy on the decision or whatever, and I came down to a point where I had to re-enlist, so I re-enlisted. In order for me to re-enlist, I had to make a decision to go to drill sergeant or recruiting duty. Before I could make that decision, I was deployed on my first deployment to Afghanistan. When I came back off that deployment to Afghanistan, I went to drill sergeant duty. While I was on drill sergeant duty is when my career turned around. I competed and won the 2009 drill sergeant of the year competition, and that opened up a lot of avenues for me and a lot of spotlight. So it was at that point where a lot of senior leaders saw the potential I had and saw that I was leading and I was changing organizations at a pace with a positive motivation that they had not seen before. So they had to see it for themselves. And it was nothing more than you probably already picked up while listening to me talk for the last 15 minutes, right? It's energy and passion. It's giving a shit about what you do, and it's giving a shit about the people you lead. And that's infectious to me, right? And that became the way I led people, right? It's not what you're saying, it's what you're doing. And in the Army, we always say, you lead from the front. But I could never understand when all of my leaders were in the back, saying, you need to lead from the front. So that's where I was becoming very successful as an Army leader. And it was to the point where I was making a lot of sacrifices. I won the competition. At that time, I was, so in the Army, right? So at that point, I was 24 years old. And after I won the competition, I was promoted to first sergeant. And at that point, I was 24 years old with a formation of 240 people, right? That's a lot of responsibility at that age when I was just starting to figure out myself. There was never a doubt that I could lead, right? That's why I even I wrote a paper about my previous deployment, a deployment that's for my deployments are for another podcast or whatever video. I'll also explain a deployment where I was on with my wife. Me and my wife were both on a deployment together. And there was never a doubt, because I always believed that at the root of myself, I could lead anybody, anytime, any place. And leaders saw that with me too, because I was always selected for these positions that I was not supposed to do. Right, in my military occupation, I was in the sustainment community, but most of my leadership was in a completely different world, because leaders saw a gift in me, and then I finally started to see it with the way I was being received, with the way people were feeding off me. I was always told, it's my energy, it's my energy, it's my energy. And then I always told myself, well, if it's my energy, you can't teach energy, right? And that's when I started telling my soldiers as I became a leader. I used to tell my leaders, there's a lot of books you can read on leadership, but you cannot teach energy to actually get up in the morning and give a crap about someone besides yourself. Actually care about someone else more than yourself. And this was something that I found like that was, innate with me. And I don't know where I just loved taking care of people and bringing out the best versions of themselves. And I was doing this at a young age. So at 31, I was selected to go to a premier school, a senior school, and then I was selected at a command there. And at 31 years old, I had an organization that was well over 1,200 people. Very successful there. And as I continued to go up with these positions and these ranks, with these levels of responsibilities, the reason why I never had a doubt is because I always knew that really my wife was going to pick up the burden. Part of my story is how unbalanced I was as far as a dual military spouse. That's a completely different video as well, but I attribute all of my success to my wife, who's a senior leader as well in the Army, and if it wasn't for her covering down and sacrificing her entire career, I would not have been able to lead at the capacity in which I was able to lead at. It's very easy to lead and be the best version of yourself every day when you know everything else is taken care of, when you know you got zero responsibilities when you go home, and that's like not the right answer. That's not good. I didn't see it at the time though. That's why I started by saying, now I'm actually learning how to be a father. There came a time where, I really wasn't, as I was coming up, as I was going through this ladder, even as I tell my story, I'm not mentioning my family, right? I haven't really mentioned my kids. That's where my whole career, if I could go back and, start all over, I probably wouldn't, right? And that's why I need to, talk to people that are in these leadership roles, that have these families, that are trying to balance all this stuff. I think I've just learned through my trials and tribulations that it is not easy. And I when you talk about when I was on my way to, when I got the call, now I'll tell you about my son. When I got the call, at that time I was in brigade command, and I had got the call from my son's principal saying that my son was found in the high school auditorium unresponsive. I, at the time, was stationed 3 hours away in Virginia. And as I was driving home to Virginia, I'm waiting to call my son's mother, who's in Kentucky, that we just lost our son to a drug overdose at the time, because that's what I had chalked it up to be, because no one knew why he was unresponsive. As I'm driving back, I'm talking to my wife, who's Chris's stepmom, who's waiting to receive him in the hospital. And she sees Chris come in, she's the one that lives with that trauma of seeing, my son being brought to the ER unresponsive. It wasn't until 8.5 hours later that Chris actually came back to life. Chris had a long road to recovery. And unfortunately, I was in a position where I could not take leave for an extended amount of time. So I was at that time, even at that time, I told myself, I said, hey, look, once he's good to go, we'll get him up. I'll help him the best I can for 2 weeks, and then I got to go back to work because I got a whole, I got my. At this time, I had a brigade, so it was about 7,200 people. I got these people waiting on me. I gotta get back there. So I go through rehab with my son, literally holding him hand by hand, teaching him how to walk again and talk again and get his memory back, which was deemed as a suicide attempt later, after he left the hospital, and through us going through counseling together. And it was through that counseling where I will tell you, I found out a lot those 24 years that I just glorified to everybody about, I found out a whole different 24 years from my son during that rehab process. I think I summarized it all as like I did really good at checking the block at dad, right? And what I mean by that is, when I would come home from work, I would ask Chris how he was doing. If I would see him, hey man, how was school? Oh, it was good. Okay, and I would go about my day. Or if I was hanging out with him, I would physically be hanging out with him, but mentally I would be like, somewhere else, probably at work, or thinking about something else, but not enjoying the time with him that I was supposed to be enjoying with him for whatever reason. I come to find out that all the times that I was I would call this like open the door to any parent that's out there. If you don't get anything from this story, this is one that I ask you to just remember. I would call this open the door, right? Because every time I would come home, my son's room was upstairs. I would walk and I would look upstairs and the door would be closed, but I would have a conversation with him through a closed door. Because at that time, I was too lazy to walk my ass upstairs, open his door, and have a conversation with him, because that was going to be too hard for me to do at the time. Because I exhausted all of my energy at work with a bunch of people that don't remember who the hell I am right now, right? But my son is still remembering the heartache I gave, and will always remember the heartache I gave him growing up. I didn't understand it at the time, so I couldn't open the door. So I would just have a conversation, but to me, I was answering the question, did you talk to your son? Yeah, I talked to him. He's doing good. Texted him, I called him. The reason why I call this chapter Open the Door of my life is because through therapy, I found out that my son was injecting fentanyl for 3 months while I was having conversations with him from downstairs. He was a drug addict. In my house, living under my roof, and that was eye-opening for me, right? And I hope this doesn't resonate with anybody, right? But I'm telling you, in 6th grade, I was in El Paso, Texas, as a duty station, going to school. I brought my son with me because I knew, I was going to have to live apart from my wife. The one of many times. So I took Chris with me to, try to get some bonding there, or, try to figure that thing out. And then in 6th grade, he was offered cocaine. I found that out a year ago. Now look, I could just be totally exploiting how bad of a father I am. But I think there's someone out there that lacks this balance as well. But again, and my son was rooting me on. It's like, my dad's crushing it. He was coming to all my ceremonies. He was coming to everything, probably high as shit. I couldn't focus at the time. Listening to my son talk, at the time was 18-year-old son talk. Somebody that I thought I had grew this man up, talking about how he was injecting fentanyl upstairs in my house, doing a whole bunch of drugs, guns up there. It's typical in today's society. This is not blowing anybody's mind, but I'm a senior leader in the military. I have everything figured out. That was not the case at all. So then it was time for me to go back, and it was, first of all, those 2 weeks were probably the most impactful 2 weeks I've ever had with my son in both our lives. I learned more about him than I ever did before. It was to the point where I called my leadership and I told them that I can no longer serve. Anybody that knows me in the Army knows that there's no way I would ever do that. But the people on the phone knew me as well, and that's why they knew they needed to take care of me. After serving 24 years, the most senior leaders in our Army helped me transition in 2 weeks. Which is very difficult to do in the capacity in which I was leading, because they knew the severity of it, and I don't think I did, because I was just like, hey, I can't come back, I can't serve. But I think they knew that no, we can't let you come back. Even if this is just a thought you're having and you're going to come back in a week or so, we're not going to let that happen. And if that was the case, it was the best decision that they had made for me, because I was able to, like I said, I was able to actually be a father to my son. And there is a success story to it. We were able to get him back on his feet. I literally was able to, walk him to graduation in high school, and he received an academic scholarship for Campbell University. He went there for a year, and it was me and him going at it and still. Being so deliberate as a father. I'm being so deliberate on being a father to my son. It's like the roles have changed now to where I'm loving my son how I used to love soldiers, when that should be completely fucking flip-flop. Completely. Now that I've been retired for 2 years, now I realize, it's not okay that my soldiers talk better about me and have more respect about me than my own son. And that's the reality of it. And that was how unbalanced I was. And that's really why I wanted to kind of get that story out there. There's people that are struggling with this. They have to, because society has so many negative influences, and we can only try to do so much as parents. But at the same time, we have to make money. We have to provide for our kids. So there's going to be some sort of imbalance. There's going to be an imbalance regardless. A lot of people don't catch it until very late. Some don't ever catch it. Maybe I caught it at 44, but I'm definitely learning every day something else besides being a leader in the Army. I would tell every senior leader that is continuing to serve, you can have the kitchen table conversation, right? This is what I've learned from a kitchen table conversation. Now, keep in mind, I'm coming from a family that my wife is the same rank as me. We are both senior leaders. I don't know everybody's family from my experience. And my wife told me this. Kitchen table conversations. If you're killing it and you're leading and you got another opportunity coming, you're going to sit down at the kitchen table, you're going to tell your family about the opportunity, and 9 times out of 10, they're going to support you because they see that you've already been so energized for the promotion, because the energy you're coming at, right? The energy is so I already put my wife in a predicament where she's like, yeah, of course we're going to support you, babe. You got this, right? And I made it very hard for her to be like, but what about? I learned through counseling with my son. Now, I'm not telling everybody, all right, you need to go to a third-party counselor and tell, hey, I'm about to get a promotion. Are you guys going to be okay with this? But I do think that, as the more senior you get in the Army, you got to be 100%. And that's for for the communication that I would have with my wife. I would have approached that conversation different. And then with my kids, depending on their age, my 15-year-old all the way to, him being 19, he was always going to support me because he knew I was going to be off his ass. So it allowed him to do whatever the hell he wanted to do, but he still showed me his support. And I was so bogged down that I didn't have the time to think during that conversation. He's supporting me because he knows that I'm going to be too busy to really get down you don't think about that at the time. You're just grateful for their support for you. And then you start crushing it in your position and they start living their life. And then, that's how things keep going. If it's a position that you can still maintain a balance, just understand as teenagers get older, they're going to require a lot different type of parenting that may not be able to do on the phone or through text message sometimes. And that's one thing that I thought I could do, and I couldn't. I really needed to take my son under my wing, and I couldn't invest that time. But I think if I would have invested that time in Chris, I'm not sure I would be sitting here as a senior leader, retired senior leader. I think within the military, I made a lot of momentum when I included Chris in a lot of what I did, because I never did. So I included Chris so he can kind of see what I do and maybe have a much more a better appreciation for what I did. But it's very hard. It's very hard to do. You can only do the best you can as a parent up until a certain age, and that's like cliche to say. Like, parents know that, but what they don't know, what I didn't know, is how consumed or how in love I was going to be with my job. Like, I did not see that coming. That's why my message is for a very small group, I think, of people that just, they have this passion for what they do. A lot of people hate going to work. They can't wait to go home, right? This is like flip-flopped in a lot of people's situations, right? But for like CEOs, like senior leaders that are making a lot of money, because their presence is needed. Like, they have got to, build culture. They got to build climate. They got to sustain culture, right? They need to be with their people. So like, how could you be at home? Like, you can't, right? Like, I missed my first son's no-pitch baseball game because I was getting ready to go on a deployment. Like, I can't come home. There's people that are not in the military that are in those same situations, right? So maybe I'm just telling the story of like, hey, this is the shit that's going to happen afterwards if you don't catch it now. My son's 19, and we have the best relationship now that we ever had since I've been out, right? Since I've been out. And then I've been very deliberate. I did mess this up. I've been very deliberate on selecting the next position to make sure I was not balanced at all. It is going to be my family, and then I'll have a job. Now. We have all these terms: effective leadership, which leadership is supposed to be effective, so that never made sense to me. But infectious was something that, how I feel, like the energy I have, the passion I have when I'm in front of people or when I'm in an organization and I need to do something with that organization. My energy is what gravitates an audience, right? So that's not like what I'm saying, it's what I was doing, right? So I would do everything with them, and then I would also, at the same time, here's where the infectious comes, you have to get a genuine relationship with people. You have to make a genuine relationship with people. If you don't have a genuine relationship with the people that you lead, you're a manager, right? You manage people. And that takes a lot of energy, right? It takes energy to wake up and want to have a genuine conversation with the people that work for you every day. So you should already want to have it. That takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of effort. It's very easy to manage people, which is why it's not infectious management, right? It's infectious leadership. Leadership should be felt, right? It should not be heard. So when people come into work, they want to be part of your organization. And what I've seen is bad leadership can be infectious as well, right? So infection is something that, pierces your skin, it breaks through your skin, and it's something that infects your body and you feel it. It does something to your entire body. Leadership, if it's done correctly, should do that. Leadership, if it's not done correctly, will do that, right? And from my experience, both in the military and outside the military, if you give me 3 days within most organizations and I get in there, 90% of the issues is leadership. 90%, and I will have that for whatever CEO, regional, district, whatever matters, wants me to go and see what I will be able to depict the issues within probably a day or two, because leadership is kind of like a lost art. And I think management is what we got out there right now. So the reason why I wanted to brand this Infectious Leadership is I want to bring leadership back. I talk to a lot of CEOs and they all say, Mike, energy spot on, and leadership is something that we need, right? I constantly try to, get my young leaders, on board to try to, pick up what I'm saying. I'm just trying to be like, hey, look, I've served at the capacity that you've served at. Let me go down there and I'll send your message there and I'll help you do that. And I'll make it infectious. Because that's what I did in the military. That's what you do as a senior enlisted advisor to a commander. And now I want to take that and I want to do it, but I want to do it my way. And I've been told the last 24 years, my way is a pretty good way. Yeah, I think it's the fact that I don't like doing things over the phone. I don't like things, if I don't have to do a Teams call, I'm not going to. It's crazy nowadays because it's easy, right? That's management, right? CEOs, leaders, I'd rather get on a plane and come see you and look you in your face and then we can talk, right? I think I answered one of these questions on a resume. It was like, how do you affect change? The first answer I put is don't try to do it over the phone. What change are you really going to influence if you're trying to do it over a phone? Not even looking at a person in their face, right? So when you talk about infectious leadership, what made me successful in the military was I was actually one that got off my ass and did what all of my bosses expected me to do, right? See, like senior level leaders, they expect that within their formations. They don't get it though. And they don't have time to have that bandwidth to go out there and do that. So that's why, I'm going to get out there and I'm going to use the 24 years of experience and all of the situations that my military career has put me in, which I challenge any organization out there to put me in theirs. And I'm going to use it to make people better. Being a husband and a father. Being a husband and a father. So when I used to do in-briefs to my organizations, I used to have a quad chart. And I used to put like who I am. And I used to put leader, husband, father. Right? And then it wasn't until like my last position, I changed it to husband, father, and leader. But now I just told you that I'm now still learning how to be a father. So even though back then I thought I had it, I was like, oh no, that's not right. I'm a husband first. I'm a father first. Checking the block, right? I didn't open the door. But now, I'm learning how to be a husband, and I'm learning how to be a father, and I'm going to talk to people, right? You counseling, friends, whatever you want to call it, to better myself. And I've never done that before. So like for a husband, one of the most powerful things I've heard recently that I've learned was that in a marriage, if there's one person that says, I think everything is great, I think this marriage has been, great. I think we have great communication. The other person thinks the total opposite. And I think I was the one that always thought, like, this is great. My wife's got household, she's crushing it. I've learned that now in my first year of transition. And then I think we've already learned what I'm literally in elementary school when it comes to being a father. My 19-year-old and my 8-year-old are teaching me how to be a father. Like I now know when my 8-year-old says, Daddy, look, like I should stop what I'm doing and look. The old me would have been like, yeah, dude, that's great. That's great. I got it. So every day I'm learning. Yeah, so my wife and I met when we were both drill sergeants, teaching other people how to be drill sergeants. At the time, I had just gotten custody of Chris when he was 3. I got sole custody of Chris when he was 3 years old. That's another story. And she was a single parent to my other son, Antonio. She taught me, like, literally from day one, like, how to be, like, somewhat of, like, a parent. Because I was a single dude. I was 23 years old. I was making really good money. And I was in a really good leadership position. So there was, like, I was dropping my kid off at daycare at 3 o'clock in the morning, and I was picking him up at 9 o'clock at night. Like, that is how Chris spent ages 3 to 5. So I, like, but again, I open the door, right? He would come home, he'd go in bed. Hey, good night, bud. I love you, man. Close the door. I did my job as a parent. And that's when my wife, no, like, you gotta do more than this. So she started putting it in my mind that, like, you suck at, like, doing this. I was like, all right, fair. So, as I progressed, she was progressing at the same pace as me, but she was putting up with so much additional bullshit with me, with her job, and with the house, right? Because she was still doing all that because I was so down on my stuff. Like, I don't know how or why she did it, but she did. And then she got it was a point where in our marriage, we've been together for 15 years. There was a extent where we didn't spend about 8 years together because of deployments. Now in 2011, we were on a deployment together. Like I told you, it was going to be a different podcast, but my wife and I have literally watched each other on different platforms during a deployment, out on mission. Not a lot of husbands can say that. Like, at the time, it was scary as shit. You could just imagine. But now it's pretty badass to talk about. So I got to talk about it. I saw my wife in a gunfight. That sounds cool. But that's a story we could tell, and we do. Like, my wife has shared the stage with me, and we've talked to young soldiers coming in the military that were married, that were dual military, and she will tell you, it was all her. And I will tell you, it was all her. Like, when people look at me and look at the position I was in, that is all her. And people say it in speeches all the time. I want to thank my wife. I always thank my wife first. Always. She's the first person I always thank, because she was always the number one reason why I was where I was at. So here she is. So here she is now. She is serving at a very high level in the Army, and I had to find out real fast what she has been doing the last 15 years in about 3 weeks, and I did not do well, and that caused a lot of friction between us because I underestimated what she was doing all those years, and I thought I could do it even out of the military now, and that's where, when I said I almost messed this up, that's when I had to make a decision to not only just separate myself from the military right now, and I have got to make a deliberate effort to focus on me so I can be a better husband and father, because I was not. And that could be a whole bunch of things. That could be the normal isms of transition. That could be whatever you want to allude it to, but that was not, I was not what I needed to be. And if it wasn't for my wife telling me, like, you better figure some shit out, because this is not going to work with you going at this pace like this. So I said, yeah. And through all that, I figured, all right, well, maybe I got some stuff to tell. So here I am. It is hard to do something you love and to be a very, very good husband and father, wife and daughter, or it's hard. That's the first thing I learned. Like, there's no like I told you, I don't think I have answers to it. I don't think I would have been a successful leader if it was flopped, right? I think most successful people in the world would say that their success is not measured on how good of a husband and father, like a parent and spouse they are. Like, there's got to be where you are, you're going to spend time with people, you're going to spend time with your family, you're going to have that quality time, but I think it's good. It's hard. Infectious leadership was what I did to neglect my son. That's really what it comes down to. It's like both worlds clashed, right? Because if I would have had the manager mentality, which a lot of leaders do, they do bare minimum. They're awesome parents. They're awesome spouses, but everybody thinks they're shit at work, which is crazy because I used to say this all the time. People talk about work all the time, like work. No matter what you do you not spend more time at work than you do with your family? So why would you not give a little more to the people that you work with? And I'm not saying totally neglect your family, but I never understood that. It's like, it's just my 9-to-5 job. Well, it is, but people are working for you. The same problems you have as a leader, they have, except the difference is, as a leader, they can shut the door and hide behind them and close the world off for a couple hours. Right now, that person can't. They got to still work for somebody with all that shit going on in their life. They're like, yes, sir, yes, ma'am. Okay. And that CEO, whoever we're talking about, that top tier leader, they know I know what they know what I know, right? But I'm not in their organization. So now I can enable them. So we can have a conversation. They can let me know what's important to them. So now I know their philosophy, their vision, or whatever they want cultivated down to the lowest person in their organization. That's the conversation we have. And then this is what I think's going on. They don't have time. Senior leaders don't have time to do it all. The reason why I can be beneficial and infectious, I can do this, is because in the military, that was my job. My job was for me to travel all over, get down and deep to an organization, and then report back to my boss the pulse of the organization. There's nobody like that in corporate America. There's no one that's advising the boss on anything. Or if there is, they're very scared to do so because that's going to be, you're not going to tell the boss, no, I will. If you really give a shit about your organization and you really give a shit about the people, then I will. I'll get down there and I'll give real feedback. That's where the infectious comes. Because it's very, it's getting under the skin of the problems of the root cause of people, organizations, whatever. And a lot of energy, right? So if I talk to a leader of an organization for 30 minutes and they don't pick up on the energy that I can bring to their organization, I don't want them and they don't want me. And they don't want their organization to thrive or they just don't care. Like, I know that within me what I can provide. So that's what that is. And that's hard to find. And I since I've started this thing, I came up with this whole thing because I would start talking very basic stuff at conventions of like, you know, these 35, 38-year-old leaders that are very, very wealthy and very good positions, like CEO, CPO. They're up there and they're just asking me like, how did you like motivate people? I could show you better than I can tell you. You can't teach. That's not a conversation. That's kind of what I want it to be about. I want it to be about, it's kind of like bringing like what you see like from a football coach, like a coaching mentality, that like into corporate America. And there's no reason why that can't be.